Hello and welcome to the Sylvan Healing Sanctuary's podcast. We're currently doing a series of interviews where we're interviewing fellow energy healers to find out about their journey and the types of energy healing that they do and the way that it helps people. At the Sylvan Healing Sanctuary, their aim is to promote, offer and discuss the many aspects of healing, energy healing, spirituality and meditation. They believe there's a role in today's world where modern medicine, ancient wisdom and healing can come together to create a powerful union, giving you the tools you need to support your own self-healing and transformational journey. Today you're going to hear from Tracey, who is a psychic coach. She helps women with health issues to move from being in pain and being miserable and feeling like they're only just existing to achieving wellness using her proven approach of identifying the root cause of their health issue, clearing their beliefs or trauma around that root cause and creating new positive beliefs that will transform their health, give them back their lives. Tracey believes that we can all heal ourselves and that we need to look to our mind-body connection. Our body speaks our mind, literally, and that there's room for allopathic and holistic to sit side by side. I do hope you enjoy listening to this interview, and if you do, please let us know by downloading it, following us, or liking us, depending on the platform you're listening or watching on. Thank you so much. Tell me what I need to know about younger Tracey that will help me understand the lady in front of me today.
Okay, so like everybody, I've been to the school of life. It wasn't awful. There was no major trauma. I didn't get beaten or abused. I wasn't abandoned or anything like that. But I'm shaped by everything that happened. I'm quite open about the fact that I was adopted at birth and then my adoptive parents divorced. So there's lots of what I call little trauma. There's the emotional impact of all of those things. And then everything else that life throws at us. And I just had this deep fascination with all things paranormal. Everyone else was reading Janet and John and Spot the Dog, and I was reading about reincarnation, spontaneous combustion, UFOs, you name it, everything that I could possibly lay my hands on. And somewhere in my head, I just felt that the answers to what wasn't right in my life, or the solution to making my life what I wanted it to be, lay in that realm rather than in any other realm. And I'm not really sure what other realm I thought that there was. And so from a really young age, I just was constantly delving into everything to do with the mind, body and spirit, healing, self-development, personal growth. And I don't actually know that I can put into words exactly what I was looking for, but I was looking for something. And I think at some point I did find it. I'm just not 100% sure when it was or what it was, if that makes sense.
How did you know you thought you'd found it?
I'm only looking backwards and going, actually, do you know what? I'm happy, I'm settled, I'm healthy. I love what I do. And I'm still passionate about all things mind, body, spirit. I've got at least 3 books on the go to do with the mind, body, spirit, as well as some fiction to just completely switch off to. And so I feel like I discovered it. But actually, as we know, it's not about the end destination. It's about the journey. And so my path that I've taken through life, keep picking up bits that I was drawn to and people that I was drawn to. I just think that I found what I needed emotionally without necessarily realizing it. But I'm always still looking. I haven't gone, oh, that's it, I'm done. I can throw all that out now. I'm still very much curious and looking at new stuff as it comes up and updating old stuff as they get more answers. So I'm still on that voyage of discovery. But I would say now it's probably more about my friends and family and my clients and not necessarily so much about me.
So take me back to young Tracey, who's interested in the things that other kids aren't interested in. What was that like around that time? Was that did you find any other people that were interested, or was you just you?
Oh my God, where to start with that? Well, I remember, I think we must have watched Scooby-Doo. I honestly don't know how it started, but we went on ghost hunts around our local estate, which was like a 1960s estate. It wasn't even that old, you know. And all of the people that we hung out with in our road were fully on board with that. But I think that was just because it was something different to do. Over the years, I very, very much found my tribe. If anyone remembers back to 96, the in book was the Celestine Prophecies. It took the world by storm. And I'd recently moved to Herne Bay. I joined a book club. We reviewed that book. And that was kind of the turning point in my adult life. As a child, though, there was so much that went on that I really didn't understand. I had things like night paralysis and night terrors, or really vivid nightmares. I'm not quite sure which is the right term. I just had all sorts of odd experiences that it didn't seem like anyone else around me was having. So I didn't really feel like I quite fitted on that front, because everyone else was normal, in inverted commas. And so I was just delving into different subjects, trying to find answers and looking for confirmation of the things that I was experiencing, rather than me just being an oversensitive, overreactive child, which is, I think, how my parents probably labelled me.
Interesting. So I'm going back to, you mentioned the book, The Celestine Prophecy. For those that haven't read it, that book is about, it's when I read it, it felt like a mix of fiction and a mix of, oh my God, some of this feels right and true. Yep. So it's a book about, I'm trying to remember now because it's a long time ago I read it, but it's somebody who's discovered these scrolls that have got the answers to deep stuff in life, and there's one missing or something. They've got to go to another country and try and find it, and they're caught up in this dynamic by accident, out of curiosity, and start to understand how to see energy fields around. If I remember rightly, it started with plants and then people, and people were introducing it and showing them these energy fields and how they affect and connect and work with each other. But alongside that is the storyline, the exciting storyline of somebody wants to get the scrolls from them, stop them from finding it, and so there's like this exciting fictional plot line, but really cleverly weaved in with it the story of discovering energy and energies, and that for me was a really early indication that there's more than we can see around us, and that maybe all of us can tune in and see some of that if we know how to look.
Yeah, and it was very much written as fiction back in the day, but I've since heard that, I think it was James Redfield that wrote it. He actually wanted to write it as non-fiction. It was almost more of a biography or an autobiography, but nobody would take it. And so he repackaged it as fiction, and it was huge. And he swears that if he'd have written that as non-fiction, they'd have just written him off as a flake, and he would have probably sold nothing. So
that's, I think, really parallel to the work we're trying to do here, which is raising the awareness of energy and energy work. What are your thoughts on those parallels?
I think it really crossed the divide from the woo-woos, like, oh yeah, that's just for those weird people over there. And then you've got what you'd call as like muggles these days, who had no awareness. And I think there's probably, if you did a survey, I think a lot of people would go, oh, it was just fiction. And then you got people go, yeah, but what if it was real? Wouldn't that be fantastic? And it's like, well, it is real. That is our reality. And so I think it helped blur the lines. And I think it probably opened up their spiritual eyes without it being seen as too odd, too weird. And I think I would put money on the fact that a lot of people got interested in the mind, body, spirit arena because of that book, because it was digestible. It wasn't too fluffy, as I call it. It was fairly normal. It was no more woo woo than Harry Potter is. But people accept Harry Potter, you know. So I think that book did a huge amount of good for the mind, body, spirit arena.
Talk to me more about that explanation, the mind, body, spirit arena. What is that?
Okay, so to me, I don't really like the word new age. It's not new age, it's today age. It's like, so that doesn't fit for me. I don't mind using terms like woo woo and fluffy because people get that, but it is, everything that we do is about the mind, the body, and the soul, or the spirit, whichever word you prefer, and everything is interconnected. And I work very, very hard and very firmly in the mind body connection, helping people to heal issues, because everything starts in the subconscious mind. So you can't just take one away from the other two. You've got to have the three together. And so we are all of those three things. We are the mind, we are the body, we are our soul or our spirit, and each one affects the other one. That doesn't mean you have to go for tarot readings. That might not interest you. You might just be incredibly intuitive. So a lot of the stuff that I connect with, as far as I'm concerned, I prefer the term mind, body, spirit rather than spiritual, spiritualist, or new age, because it just resonates for me more. And I think people find that a bit more acceptable as well, because they're not necessarily spiritualists. They're not necessarily new age people.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we're struggling with is the word spiritual has been kind of adapted and changed and isn't necessarily a positive use of when we're talking about connecting energetically.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if you Google spiritual, it will come up with lots of religious stuff. And I don't particularly consider myself religious, even though I have my own beliefs. I'm not agnostic, and I'm not I can't think what the other word is.
Atheist.
That's the one. I'm not atheist either, but I have my own beliefs, and so I follow those. But I don't really have a label that I can put on me, if I'm honest.
And labels aren't always necessarily a positive thing either, are they?
No, we had this conversation yesterday. We were talking about someone being labelled autistic, and whilst it's helpful to get the help you need when you've got a label, it can actually hold you back, or the person who's been labelled, because we buy into the labels, or people judge us by that label. So yeah, I'm not a massive fan of labels if I can help it.
So looking at the spiritual or energy side of the work, so you've got the mind body connection, and I think society as a whole, or Western society certainly, has kind of nailed the body bit. They're like, okay, like modern science and medicine, it's all about body. And I think it feels to me like we're flowing into understanding the mind better now. There's a lot more talk about mental health, and you know, people are much more open to the idea of seeing therapists and therapy. And it kind of feels like, in the Western world anyway, to me, that it will hopefully naturally then flow to the spiritual and the energetic. So that's where I think the world as a whole is kind of at, or at least the society I've been brought up in. I think Eastern medicine certainly have started more with the spiritual side of things. What is your take on the mind body and the next connection on the spirit? So at what point for you does that then become a part of it? Is it from the beginning, or is it a process where you go from one to the next?
I think the word that springs to mind is holistic. It's the whole thing. Okay, because you could have the best diet in the world, you could exercise fabulous, you might be perfectly okay in your emotional life, but yet your soul might not be being fulfilled. You might be doing a job that pays the bills and gives you nice holidays and everything, but isn't actually making you feel fulfilled and rewarded and satisfied. So I feel like you have to tick all three boxes. You know, and people might come to me for a reading, psychic reading, and they might be in a relationship that's not working, but they'd rather stick with it than leave because they are materially comfortable, or they don't want to upset the family dynamic or whatever, but they're miserable because they're not doing what feeds their soul. And so it's not just a case of mending a broken bone, or, you know, giving someone some Reiki to remove an energy block. It is about the whole lot. And, you know, Western medicine is getting better at bringing three together, but they do tend to still be more separate than they should be. Whereas when you look at the ancient religions, like not even religion, sorry, the ancient health things like Ayurveda, yoga, that kind of stuff, they all look at keeping the mind, body, and spirit all balanced. They don't separate it out.
So if you had somebody that needed help from you, and the first two were balanced, but the spirit bit wasn't, what would you do?
I would start looking at what the balance needs to be. So let's say that they do hate their job and it's not fulfilling them. Then I would be looking to help them understand what they need to get from their work. Say, for instance, that, I don't know, they were in a dentist receptionist role and they loved healing, they loved helping people, but actually that role just didn't make them feel happy and valued and fulfilled. It might be that they're in the right arena, they're in health, they're working with people, but they need to be in a role where they feel that what they're doing is more worthwhile or more effective. So I'm not going to say to them, you know, maybe you need to go and be a policeman. Maybe they need to go and be a mental health coach, or maybe they want to be a hypnotherapist. And they can help people not be terrified of going to the dentist, for instance. So it might not mean that they're a million miles away from where they need to be. They just haven't quite fine-tuned it. So I would help them to understand what it is they want to achieve. You know, if you wanted to be on a job of £50,000, that's very, very different from, I don't actually really care, I don't need the money, I just want to work. And then they might go and do volunteer work. So we have to look at the whole package of what they need from that area. And it might not be work. It might be that actually they need some kind of belief system of some sort because they've never had one. And by finding that belief system, actually now they feel balanced, and actually they are happy, mind, body, and spirit, and they don't change anything else in their life. And I have to say, a lot of people that come to me for readings at the moment, I am finding that they're not fulfilled. They're not getting that reward that they need emotionally. And so a lot of them are looking to be a healer of some sort. And I don't know whether everyone else agrees with me, but I believe even barmaids and waitstaff can be healers, because how many times do you hear about someone crying into their beer? Or you might have someone who comes in for a coffee and they sit there all afternoon because they've lost their partner, for instance, and the wait staff will end up chatting to them and making them smile and listening to their woes. And so, you know, you don't have to heal by being a nurse. There's a million ways that you can bring healing to somebody.
So as you're aware, our specific area of interest is energy healing. And you mentioned Reiki earlier. Tell me a bit more about that, what it means to you, and when you might use it.
Okay. Gosh, I love Reiki. It's such a wonderful energy system. And as a teacher, watching my students walking, going, I don't even know if I can do this. You can just tell by the energy. They're like, oh, what if I've made a mistake? What if I'm not going to be a healer? And then by the end of the day, where they felt energy, they've given healing, they've learned it, and they're like, oh my God, that was amazing. And so that trajectory that they're on is phenomenal. As a Reiki practitioner, I love the experiences that my clients have when they're having Reiki. And the responses are all different, and not, you know, they don't all feel the same. They have very different experiences. But I love being able to help people and make a difference to them in whatever way that is. and using it on a daily basis, well, there's not really any limits. There's only limits that we put on them. I've used them on my vitamins in the morning to help increase their effectiveness. I've used them on the car battery in the winter. I've used Reiki to send to a meeting that I know is going to be quite challenging. Obviously, I've used it on myself when I've had health issues.
Did you use it for this meeting?
No, God, no. I've known you for years. I knew this was going to be easy. No, it sounds like, say I was going to an interview or a podcast where I thought it was going to be maybe a bit more confrontational, like everyone's got to, be against everyone else, kind of devil's advocate kind of thing. I might want to send some to that, thinking, like, I don't want it to get heated. I want everyone to have a different opinion, but I need to make sure it's a positive difference, not a combative difference. Or sometimes in the past where I've used other venues to do workshops, they might hold all sorts of events there that are quite emotional, like AA meetings, run ADHD toddler groups, or whatever it might be. So the energy in the venue can be like all over the place, and I know that I need to change that energy so it's going to work with whatever I'm going to be teaching there. You don't want crazy energies if you're teaching meditation there. Okay. Sometimes if a venue's been a little bit flat, I've used Reiki to really push the energy up, because I'm going to be running like a mind, body, spirit fair there, and I want energy to be really high and like really amazingly brilliant. So I will just use Reiki to help change the energy, increase the energy, settle the energy. I use it for so many things, to be brutally honest.
One of the things that you said at the beginning of that was experiences, about the experiences. Tell me what you experience when you're giving energy healing.
Oh, wow. I've been doing this a long time. Remember, I've been doing this like 12, 14 years. I just get so many things. Sometimes I might just see colors. Sometimes, because I do two different styles of Reiki. So I offer Usui Reiki, which is the more traditional, and that was discovered back in the 1800s. But I also do Angel Reiki, which is technically older because it goes back to Lemuria and Atlantis, but it's also more modern because we lost Angel Reiki when we messed up Atlantis, and we got it back when humanity reached a certain level. So it's kind of old, but it's not. And if I'm using Angel Reiki, I can like feel this draft over my hands, like someone's breathing, like. But I don't get that when I'm doing Usui Reiki. That feels very different. When I'm teaching those students who've got one but not the other one, whichever one they're now learning, they will compare the differences and they will feel a difference in the energy. And the same with people having Reiki if they've had both. I've picked up on people's past lives. I get their emotional state. I sometimes get messages from people who've passed for them, but I pick and choose whether I pass those on, because not everybody wants that when they're having healing, and that's fine.
And that's a very different thing, isn't it? So energy healing and reading are two different things, and I think people get muddled up with that, don't they? Sorry,
they can do. But when you're in that very relaxed state and we're giving healing, it is very easy for the angels to step forward, or loved ones of the person having the healing. And so not everyone is open to that, but most people who come to me know what I do, so they're perfectly happy if they get a message as well. But that isn't an experience that's across the board. And certainly if somebody did do that and the person having the healing didn't want to hear it, then that's fine. Okay, so it wouldn't get imposed on you. All right, so I don't want to scare people. I very much feel physically what my clients are going through. It might even be that they're just trying not to cry. I will get that choked up feeling. If they've got a bad back, I will feel their physical back pain, and it will go, it doesn't stay. What else do I experience? Sometimes I just get a really nice feeling of peace and tranquility. It's not always big, profound experiences. But being the healer is great, because when you're giving Reiki, you get Reiki yourself, which I quite like. So that works well, which you don't get with massage. If you're massaging someone or you're trained in massage, who's going to massage you? So I love Reiki for that. What else do I experience? Just a sense of well-being and calmness and feeling centered and just being, because all I can do in that moment is be the channel for the Reiki. I can't answer a phone or go and hoover. I can only be in that moment, and that's really quite nice.
Do you get any physical sensations?
Yeah, quite often. Yeah. And I might get a lot of clairvoyance. I might see lots of things. But I work in a very different way to a lot of healers. So during a session, I will register whatever I'm picking up about you, the person having Reiki, but then afterwards I will expand on that. So if I'm picking up something in the throat chakra, for instance, I'm going to know that there's something going on where they're not expressing themselves, or they're not talking about something they need to. And I will help them understand that imbalance and help them understand what they need to do to resolve that. So I do take it a step further. It's not just a case of come to me, lay on the therapy bed, I give you Reiki, you get up and away you go. Mine's wider than that. But everyone works differently, and that's another beautiful thing about what we do.
And so what does the person receiving it experience?
That varies. I've had people who've had the most profound experiences that have left them crying because it's so beautiful. And then I've had someone else go to me, do you know what? I relaxed. And they didn't really feel anything, but their partner had already said to me, they don't relax. So for them to relax for half an hour was probably in some ways more profound than the beautiful experience that the person at the other end of the spectrum had. Because if you don't relax, your body is under pressure and tension 24/7. And that's definitely not good for anyone.
So thinking about that person who had the experience that was, like you said, probably profound, but in a very different way, what would it work for somebody who was cynical about it?
Yeah. Absolutely. And the client that just relaxed, they weren't cynical. They were, I would call it healthy skepticism. I don't believe that everything that goes bump in the night is a ghost. It might just be that your cat's not sunning over, So I prefer that people sit on the fence, keep that healthy skepticism, and until they've had the right experiences, the right knowledge, the right information for them to be able to move off of the fence in either direction. Okay, that to me is preferable than someone who's basically going la la la, no, it's a load of rubbish, not interested, don't talk to me about it, because they've already made their mind up and they're not going to change it. Okay. So those that are healthily skeptical, that have never had a Reiki session before, don't know what to expect, some of those have had equally amazing experiences because it's totally new to them, and they've come with no expectation. They've just come with an open mind, expecting to have some energy healing and see what happens. And I think that's good, to come with that mindset rather than having already decided what it's going to be like.
So what kind of things does the energy healing assist or help with? So, for instance, if somebody came to you and said, because I can understand why it would help on a spiritual sense, but if somebody had like a physical problem, can energy healing help that?
It absolutely can. And I'm not sure how much the listeners will know, but the NHS does actually employ Reiki practitioners within the NHS. So, we're legitimate now. So if someone came to me with a physical ailment, because of the way that I coach people, I believe and have worked with people where their physical ailment is rooted in something that's gone on in their emotional world and is in their subconscious mind. Might even go back to when they were a child. It might be down to last week. Okay. But the physicality is about using the energy to get the blocks out of the way. So if you think of our body as an energy system or a load of electrical circuits, if one of those cables breaks, then the power's not passing through. And that would be the block. So the Reiki basically reconnects those two ends of the cables so the power can flow again. All right. So think of us like electricians, if you like. And what we do is we make sure that those energy systems are working correctly and functioning properly all the time. And a physical ailment is basically your body telling you that something isn't right. And so if we can get the block to go, then the energy will flow again. And that's more when I would be more likely to then be able to help them on a wider level by saying, well, you know, that is rooted in this. And if you change this, that will go away. So I can use it as a real tool for empowerment. So I'm trying to think of physical issues that people have been to me with that we have worked on. And I've had all sorts over the years, whether it's migraines, back pain, arthritis, just you think of it and I've probably worked on it at some point.
That's really interesting. So, and again, that just leads back to the whole everything being connected to each other.
Absolutely.
So tell me more about the values and principles that underpin your approach to healing and well-being.
Okay. So there's no judgment. It doesn't matter whether you're an alcoholic or the most centered person on this planet. If you come to me for healing, you've got a need and I'm happy to help you. Okay. In terms of the overall healing, it is also down to each of us to take responsibility for our own health. And there are people where they might be in the situation where I can't do a great deal. Let's say that I've got a lady who's looking after elderly parents and it's hard and it's emotionally crushing to see your parents aging and having health issues. So she might come to me for Reiki and leaves floating on cloud 9, but she's going back to the same situation. So unless I can change how she sees it on a mental level, we're just going to be in a holding pattern until something changes. And that is sometimes all it is. You know, it's remedial work, but it's not going to change a huge amount. On the other hand, if someone comes to me who's got an emotional block, maybe that's down to a past relationship. By helping them break that down, it might mean that they're open to a new relationship, and that's helped and healed that situation. So there's no limits, there's no dogma, there's no religion or anything like that. It's very, very non-denominational, no judgment. I can help anyone with anything as long as they want me to. And I think that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I don't really impose anything on anyone.
So you said that you can help anyone with anything. Is there a particular group or a particular set of issues that are your favorite ways of working?
Really? I would say that those people that want change in their life and those that are ready to do the work, they might have a Reiki session with me and they might, as a result of that, go and do the work so that they don't need to come to me anymore. So if they know that they're not very outspoken at work and people are trampling over their boundaries and they realize that it's impacting their health, and that they will then go and speak to their management and do something about it, I love that they're empowering themselves. So it's not a passive thing. It can be, you could literally have Reiki, go home and make no changes in your life. But I love helping people to empower themselves to create the life they want to have, rather than just putting up with what they've got.
And is it the sort of thing where you see people regularly? Do they come back, or is it a one-time thing, or is it mixed?
It's a mix. I mean, ideally, you should have half a dozen sessions of Reiki. You know, taking like sun cream for one day in the whole of your life is not going to stop you getting skin cancer. Okay. So we always recommend you have a block, because you have a session, you go away and you let it recalibrate your system, and then you come back and have another one. I normally do them at fortnightly intervals, and you just give your body that opportunity to recalibrate before you have the next session. But there are people that literally just come for one because they want to relax. So I wouldn't turn them away. But if it was something a bit more deep-seated than that, then I would definitely recommend that they do the 6. Some people will come very regularly. They might come like every 6 months or something. So they don't come every week. And then other people will do the 6 and I won't ever see them again for Reiki. Everyone's different.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody who was never received energy healing, that was thinking of getting some, but didn't know where to turn, didn't know how to figure out who? What would you recommend to them when making that decision about who to choose?
Okay. I would always go with who your gut is drawn to. So if you asked your best friend and they went, oh, you need to go and see Mary up the road. And then when you looked at Mary's website, you thought, well, it doesn't really do it for me. Then that's not for you. All right? And it's not a personal thing. It's just energetically, you might not connect, but your friend who saw Mary, it was brilliant. All right. So if that doesn't feel like someone you want to go to, then find someone else. So recommendations are good, but still use your own judgment. Go to a mind, body, spirit fair, psychic fair, or Pamper night. And there might be more than one person there offering Reiki. Again, go with who you're drawn to. Or if you want to, because they don't tend to charge very much at those things, you want to go around all three. Go around all three and see whose energy really appeals to you. Or go and have a conversation with them if you can and see if you click. And if you kind of don't really feel like you're clicking, carry on to the next one. Put it out there to the universe. Get your guides to line up who you should go with, and someone will cross your path. There's there is loads of healing sanctuaries, virtual healing sanctuaries. There's lots of different places where you can go and find out. The spiritual churches offer spiritual healing and Reiki, so you can always go along there and see who's offering what. It is very much a case of you need to go with who you're drawn to, because you need to know, like, and trust them. And if you don't like the look of someone or you feel uncomfortable with them, you're not gonna lay down on a therapy bed and have Reiki and be relaxed. So it really isn't a personal thing. It is an energetic thing, and you need to make sure that you feel drawn to that person and want to work with them.
So use your intuition above all else.
Absolutely. And I see it a lot at the psychic fairs. You get a group of girls wandering around, and most of them want to have a reading, and there'll be one that doesn't want a reading for whatever reason, and they're, oh, have one. And I always say to her, no, if you don't want a reading or don't feel ready, don't do it. Because maybe they don't need a message. Maybe they just really aren't ready, and forcing it on them isn't going to help. Or they might just get nothing from the reader because there's nothing to connect with, because they're not meant to be having a reading. So I always say to them, if you don't feel like having one, don't get talked into it. Save your money.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Reiki. If you went around a whole room of Reiki and nobody kind of connected, you didn't really feel drawn to any of them, don't do it. but there will be someone that is right for you to have a session with.
So tell me about when something's really worked well for you, when you've done that, when you've given somebody some healing and you've been frankly amazed at what's happened.
I think one of the standout ones, I had a client that was having some issues, and she'd been to me for readings and other sessions, and she decided she wanted Reiki. So we did a session of Reiki, and I was working down by her feet because we have chakras on the soles of the feet. And so I normally put my hands not on the feet until the end, but just under them, so that the energy between me and the chakras at the soles of the feet. And I picked up this past life for her, and it was really, really deep and really intense. And it directly linked to something she was going through in this life. And when I finished the session and I talked her through what I got, she ended up sobbing, and it really made sense to her, and she had a massive release. And a few weeks later, we spoke again, and she told me that the problem she was having in this life had completely gone away. But I would have to say that's fairly rare. That isn't something I would expect from every Reiki session, or even every other Reiki session. So don't necessarily go for energy healing expecting something like that.
That segues quite nicely into one of the things I wanted to talk about, which is common myths and misconceptions, because how spiritual healing, particularly when it's worded that way, is perceived in mass media and on movies and things like that. It's usually either to me, it's been one of two ways. It's either one, they're a charlatan and somebody's out to prove it. There are plenty of them around, I know that. It's a shame for the people who are really meaning it. Or the experience was completely out of this world and absolutely, amazing, and they were cured. Talk to me more about the myths and misconceptions and how they relate to the reality.
Okay, so dismiss everything you've heard in the Bible, like pick up thy bed and walk, you're healed, because I'm not saying that doesn't happen. We've all heard of places like Lourdes and stuff like that, but that is not typically how a Reiki session or any other energetic healing's going to go. It can really massively change something that you've got going on. So you might have neck and back problems when you come in, and they might have gone by the time you leave. But I would be very, very careful about anyone that's saying, I can cure you, I can make you 100% better. And, when you read things like you're saying, like down in the deep south of America, you've got these healers that work with rattlesnakes and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, I'm not that keen to go to someone who's going to have a load of rattlesnakes running around. Okay, thanks very much, but no. And so it does conjure up all sorts of scenarios that I just wouldn't want to get involved in, let alone someone that it's completely new to them. So I would do my research. I would want to ring the person and talk to them and see what they sound like and get a feel for them, read reviews if they've got them, speak to people that have been to them, but definitely kind of park those sensational images to one side, because the press does love to make something out of nothing and to sensationalize things. And it doesn't help anybody, and it isn't a fair representation. You've got cowboy electricians, you've got cowboy doctors, you've got cowboys in any field, and so you can't just take one person that's a fraud or unethical and tar everyone with the same brush.
So would you say that it was rather than it being while people can have profound sessions in one go, and you said earlier that's quite rare, would you say that it's a subtle thing or has a cumulative effect?
I would say both. If you came to me for 6 sessions, every session would be different, and you would get something different from each session. But it can also be incredibly subtle, and you might have a session and go, well, do you know what? I feel really good, but I didn't really see anything, hear anything, have anything happen to me. And that's fine. And there's a guy in the mind, body, spirit world called Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he's a proper doctor. And in his mind, he was saying that Reiki, some people believe it works just because you're lying there on a therapy bed for half hour, 45 minutes, and you're relaxed, and your body can go into theta state, which is what happens when we're going into sleep and meditation, and that the body is just in such a relaxed state it can heal. And if that is the only reason that Reiki works, it's still a good thing, because our society is so stressed. We love to go 100 miles an hour, 24 hours a day. And so stopping for half hour, 45 minutes for some Reiki isn't a bad thing.
It's a busy world.
It really is, and it's not getting any better. So
if somebody was to learn how to do Reiki, could they do it on themselves? Yeah,
Reiki is designed to be used on the self, and ideally used every day, because like anything, you can't do it once and that's you sorted for your life, you know. But even if you only did it once a week, that would be better than nothing at all. For me, I find that I relax more if I'm just on a therapy bed and someone's giving me healing than if I'm sitting giving healing to myself. But that's just me. I'd much rather be the recipient and let someone else take charge. But for those that come to me for Reiki, a lot of them do go on to learn Reiki because they love the energy so much and they want to use it for themselves. And funny enough, just made me remember a story. I had a client who came to me the other day for a reading, and she's learned Reiki with me. And she was giving a friend of hers some Reiki the other day. And when she opened her eyes and her friend client opened her eyes, she said all the dogs were lying on their floor with their legs in the air. So the Reiki energy
as well.
Animals love it. Animals just absolutely love healing energy. They just know. So I've never been able to get rid of this image of these dogs lying in the air with their lying there with their legs in the air, just enjoying the Reiki. It just makes me smile.
Brilliant. Oh, that's such a cute vision in my head there. I'm imagining my dog.
So yeah, just having a great time.
Brilliant. Oh, I had another question in my head and then the dog thing got in the way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm just trying to remember now what I was going to ask you. Yeah, that's it. So obviously you do Reiki. I've heard other words like chi, energy healing, spiritual healing. Is it all the same thing?
Pretty much. If you go around the world, everyone has got a different word for heaven. In Spain, it's la cielo. Over here, we call it heaven. And it's the same with energy. You've got chi, you've got ki, you've got prana, you've got the Holy Spirit, you've got what else? Oh God, I've gone blank. But every country's basically got its own way, and they are exactly the same thing. So when we look at Reiki, you split it into two. The second part, the ki, ki, that is Japanese for energy. Tai Chi, you know, the meditative movement one where you do slow, very graceful movements. That's the Chinese is Chi. So they're all interchangeable. But the trouble is when you read books or you're reading things on the internet, if you've only ever heard it called Chi and now you're hearing it called Ki, it's like, well, what the hell's that? But it is all the same thing.
Brilliant. If you could describe the value of experiencing energy healing, whether you believe it to be real or not, if you could sort of sum it up in a sentence, maybe, what would that be?
Okay. It's as important to your mind, body, and spirit as the air that you breathe.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tracy.
That's okay. My pleasure. It's been fun.
I'll leave it on that note.
Thank you.
Still thinking of the dogs.
Yep, it's going to be there for the rest of the day.
Thank you so much.
It's okay. My pleasure. Nice to see you.
Sylvan Healing is a charitable cause trying to raise awareness of energy healing, and they don't have set fees. Everything they do is for donation only, by how much you can afford. So if you really like it, please have a look in the description of this video for the website, and if you'd like to make a donation, the details are there. And we thank you so much for your help and support, and hope you look forward to listening to the next one.